Live with that.
Yay.
See, I always tell Barry really, really inappropriate things right before we go live to get us happy, jiving. Yes, exactly. What I said to Barry will remain a mystery. I'm trying to think of what the incentive structure is here. Should I invite people to join our Discord if they want to know what I said to you? I still feel like it's a little inappropriate to say even in the Discord.
I was going to say I wouldn't have done with the Discord group either. I can't think of an appropriate. Maybe we need a different Patreon tier. The inappropriate.
Here, I'll tell you what. We have a
show Patreon tier.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a great incentive. Here, I got the perfect Patreon tier for that, too. Okay, so if you want to know what I said, you join us at the Patreon tier titled Human Factors Cast VIP. Now, what you'll get as a VIP is everything that every other tier gets, but you also get to host your own roundtable, and the topic of that roundtable can be what I was just telling Barry. And then everybody gets to hear. See? So for the low price of that tier. Oh, there's some incentive structure.
Oh, there we go.
I just love the alliteration with what I told you as well.
Fair enough. The things that bring you joy. It's all good.
I'll also throw another C word in there, but here, I'll type it in chat for you. So
okay, go on then. Oh yeah.
Or the triple. There we go. Yeah. Oops, that's two N's, not there. Okay. Ah, yes. Okay. Well, hey, we're here. You know what? I'll allude to it. I will allude to it since we're gonna do this anyway. But it has to do.
Surely, if you'd only get selected.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, it has to do with one of the stories for next week.
Let's see what you're doing now. I get it.
So if you'd like to help us choose what we talk about on the show next week, well, I should say next time, and that's I started changing my language a little bit more to say next time because we've had a couple of instances where there's scheduling hiccups where last week we weren't on, so we're back.
It's good to be back because I've needed my but the other bit that we do with this is obviously provide me with therapy.
Right.
Which is an important part of doing this. I don't do it for fun. I do it to
it's really interesting, Barry. So this is probably going to get deep on a personal level for me. But I've had talks with my psychologist or with my therapist about about this very thing that we're doing right now, mm-hmm. and how important it is to me. And we started digging into it, and it turns out that this is actually my social outlet. This is how I interact socially. Like, I don't have a third space, which is something that a lot of people have, whether that's church or a community group or whatever it is in there. But I don't have that third space. This is my third space. And so, yeah, it's interesting when it doesn't happen. I don't get that in a week. Like, it's not like I need it every week, but it's nice to have every week. It's a social thing. It's a very public social thing, which is why we have a couple minutes before where we talk about inappropriate jokes. Regarding next week news story, hey, it's right here. Go scan that, what I call it, the QR code thingy.
Mm-hmm.
But just because we didn't do a show last week doesn't mean that we haven't been busy behind the scenes. In fact, there's something really interesting going on tomorrow that you should all attend if you can on whatever platform you're watching this on. The HFES Town Hall will be held on that very same platform in under 24 hours from now. In fact, it'll be a little bit earlier, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Pacific or Eastern. What time is that for you, Barry? That's
8
what, 8
p.m.
8 p.m.
Yeah, I think so. 7 or 8, something like that.
It's going to be a great chat. We're going to be talking about getting involved in the internal affairs division. But really, I mean, we're going to have friends of the show on, and it's going to be a good time. We'll check in with Carolyn Summerick. We'll even have Jules Tripp there. Jules is a favorite of ours for sure. We'll also have others talking about.
I realize you could lay down a bit of a challenge now.
Ooh! What's the challenge?
How often do these town halls happen? Like once a quarter?
They're supposed to happen once a quarter. Sometimes it takes a little bit harder to get around to them.
Given that the CIHF now is doing basically the same thing but fortnightly, just saying, not that I'm competitive.
You know what? You should throw that in the chat tomorrow.
True,
hey,
yes.
The Chartered Institute is doing this.
Have you seen Eric in the town hall? That happens every 2 weeks, and and has the chief executive and the president just laid bare.
Just saying.
That's a different image, isn't it? So, yes, I shall hang around the chat tomorrow. See, actually, the Ben, our chief executive, he laid down a challenge to me, which I thought was interesting. So we have been doing these fortnightly, and actually we're recording one tomorrow. So we will have one up tomorrow afternoon if I get it all cut and done properly. Our challenge is to get it shorter. So we sort of said, right, the original idea was it's going to be 5-10 minutes on blast, saying this is what we're up to, this is what we've been, these are the questions we've been asked, go. And do that because we're doing that every 2 weeks, then we get away with it because it's nice and regular and all that sort of stuff. I haven't done one under 40 minutes yet because there's just so much to say.
Wow.
So the last, we've done 3, 4 of them, 5 of them now? 3, 4 of them. And I think the last one we said, right, we have to get this under half an hour. We have to just do it. And I think we got to 25 minutes.
Do you do any editing on those to like tighten them?
No, because I want it to be a bit more, not informal, but there's a bit of chat. Actually, there's not. I'm not that hard over about it. As long as it's under an hour, then I'm happy. And as long as it's over, I mean, the whole 20-minute thing was only in my head. There's no real drive that way because we're getting really good people staying on. So we're getting very little drop off, which is neat. But equally, I'm getting way more traction on YouTube than I am on through the audio outlets, which is
I'm not surprised.
It's interesting because with the podcasty stuff we get almost equal. With the 1202 stuff, it gets kind of equal.
Really?
Yeah. Whereas this has launched both audio and visual, and the video gets way more potential. Anyway, interesting.
Well, now I'm curious. Like, now that you've revealed that information, I can look at your numbers. So even though we're part of the same network of podcasts, I don't have access to your numbers.
You always like a bit of competitive spirit.
Yeah, I mean, So okay, all right, interesting. All right, I'm looking at your numbers. I see. And so that's about half. That makes up about half of your.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me go back into. What am I going to? Oh no, we'll do it. I need to check the audio numbers. After having said that, I'm fairly sure I'm right. So there we go. Oh, no, I need to sign in. Should already be signed in.
See, because I see. I mean, there's a range on yours that I'm seeing. That like it kind of depends on the guest looking like.
Oh, what, on the 1202 one?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that, and I think it's possibly because I didn't do it from the beginning. But then I don't know. It's interesting. I've had a bit of a hiatus as well because with everything else going on, I've got about 6 or 7 episodes lined up that I need to record, and I haven't got round to because life. But
well, like I said, we've been busy behind the scenes here. So the HFES Town Hall is one thing going on tomorrow. Going to talk to a lot of folks. The other thing that we have going on that I literally just pressed the go live button on right before we went live here. The second episode of Safe and Effective is out now. Go listen to that. It's a great conversation that I always feel like weird about this because I sit in on these conversations. I'm the producer of that. I'm one of the producers of that podcast. And it's like, make it fit for the network and all that stuff. But it's just weird to be in on a conversation and I sit there and make sure that all the sound is good and all that stuff. So I feel like I'm part of the conversation, but I'm not. It's all Heidi. Like Heidi's just taking it away and running with it. And she does a great job too. And so, she sits down with Maggie Reif, who is a device engineer, and they take the human factors perspective on med device engineer. So it's a great discussion. Like I said, it's out now. Safeandeffective.com, safeandeffectivepodcast.com. I need to get that right. Safe Effective Podcast, safeeffectivepodcast.com. You can go check out the latest episode with Maggie Reif. Yeah, title is Human Factors in Med Dev, Design, and Engineering featuring Maggie Reif. Good stuff. So yeah, we've been busy behind the scenes. Plenty of stuff for you to listen to. We're not sure if we're going to be here next week. That's the thing. We're going to try. I just don't know what my Thursday looks like yet. Because I will be not here. I will be in an undisclosed location, potentially in a hotel room.
And we have done it. I was going to say we have done it from a hotel room before. I have. I had that rather ropey setup where I'd linked it to my phone and in the middle of nowhere, and it kind of worked.
Yeah, no, I've definitely done it too. I don't think I've hosted from a hotel room yet.
It's an experience because it's also about whether you're because obviously we know what we talk like, and I'm here in the cabin in the shed at the bottom of the garden, so it doesn't matter how loud I am or anything.
Right.
But when you're in the hotel room and you're suddenly trying to talk loudly for the microphone to pick you up, but you have to also talk quietly because certainly when I'm doing it, it's midnight.
Right, yeah.
10 till midnight, and everybody else is trying to go to sleep, and all you can hear is me booming around in the background. It's
oh man.
Yeah. Oh.
So you want to know something fun? My show notes are not loading.
That's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, reminder for y'all. If y'all want to be involved with the selection of next week's story, go ahead and just scan this little linky-doo here. Anyone can vote in this. It's on our Patreon, but anyone can vote. I think you just need a Patreon account. And we usually do this in the pre-show here before every episode. We kind of preview the stories for next week. I realized I threw this up and then didn't really talk about the stories for next week. So and I keep saying next week, but let's say 289. The stories here, the Titan disaster, we might be talking about it. The sub implosion, a tale of human factors in failure. And then the next story here, humans may be more likely to believe disinformation generated by AI. And then the last story for selection is robotic glove lends a, quote, hand to relearn playing the piano, after a stroke. So go scan that linky-doo, figure out what we're going to talk about next time on the show, have a voice in it, and if you'd like to leave a comment, please do. You can always leave us a voicemail. Check it out there. Another linky-doo. QR code. I don't know why I call them linky-doos.
So we out of them stories. So we've got the three. I mean, the Titan disaster has got so much around it, and I almost feel that there is, in the fullness of time, there is going to be more than one episode on this, because it's such, and from a number of different perspectives, there is a number of different positive and negative angles to explore. But it's possibly a bit raw as well. So there's around that. I do think that no matter what happens, we will end up discussing it at some point. Humans may are more likely to believe disinformation generated by AI. Have we not done a story like that before? Or I know I've definitely had a couple of discussions around this. I don't know.
Yeah. It definitely seems like one of those things that we've talked about.
We do talk a lot about AI, so
we do.
A bit of that, but again, it's really, I guess, poignant with some work I'm doing at the moment as well. So that could be really interesting. The one I think, for me right now, the most interesting one is a robotic robotic glove lends a hand, because that feels all haptic-y. It's in the health domain. That's really quite cool. And I'm interested in the after a stroke angle, because whether actually, what about just using that sort of thing just to learn in the first place?
Right.
I think there's. I would not be unlike previous weeks, where I know that there's ones I turn around and say I definitely don't want to talk about that because it's boring, dull, or whatever. I wouldn't be unhappy with any of them stories.
Yeah, good stuff in there, and I'd be curious to see where everything lies. In fact, let me do a quick refresh here to see. Okay, yeah, so it's tied 2-2. Robotic glove and Titan disaster tied 2-2 now. So we need some tie-breaking votes here. While I throw this back up, I want to go over to chat because we have Bailey in chat with some kind words here. Nick, so happy to see what Human Factors Cast has become. Question for the cast today. I'm experiencing a vulnerable time in my user research career where I have a fear of failure. Thoughts on this? Barry, and I want to ask you, can one of the It Came From questions and put this in there? Because I think this is a great one.
I'm down with that. Yeah.
All right. Bailey, if you're watching, stick around. We're gonna throw that in our show notes, and we're gonna actually put that on the episode tonight.
Because I'm always a fan of talking about this type of thing, because I won't answer it now, because if we're going to put it in,
I know we can talk a little bit about it now, and then we'll get to it in full. Make sure we have some time to write up our thoughts on it. Go ahead, Barry. While I try to get my show notes working.
We could replace, I think, the third one with it.
I said, I can't see my show notes right now, so I need to get those working.
Let me. But I mean, this goes hand in hand with a lot of stuff that I've spoken about on a number of platforms around imposter syndrome and that fear of, are you doing the right thing? And generally, I guess one of the things I think that we do, or what we should do better than other disciplines, is the ability to talk about how we are feeling in a time whenever we're doing stuff. Because if people are feeling vulnerable, if people are just feeling out there, they're not performing at the best. But we can only do that by example. So at the UK Ergonomics Conference this year, one of the things I said on the first day, when I was doing my opening speech, was, if you're sat there, you're new into the domain, or just first time at the conference or something like that, and you want to go and speak to somebody, then don't be afraid about it. They will they're not going to bite your head off. They're not going to do anything like that. But also for everybody else in the room, be aware that some people find this difficult. And I was like, I'm one of them. I cannot, and I've said this
Right.
before on this podcast, the whole, when somebody turns around and says things like, let's do an icebreaker, a little part of me dies, because you know that you're going to have to do that whole engaging with people thing. And it's terrifying. Ironically, for a human factors person, and I think I'm a reasonably successful human factors person, all this sort of networking stuff still worries me, still fills me with fear. And that fear of failure is right on in there, because the thing that excites me around our job is we can go and take what we do and go and put it into any domain. But when you go into that new domain, how do you know that you're going to get it right? How do you know that you're not going to make a fool of yourself? So yeah, I think that's a great question.
Yeah, and so you're thinking we get rid of that third one there?
Oh yeah,
yeah. Let's do it.
We've done that a lot.
We've done it. Yeah, I think so too. Let's see here. So I'm just gonna write it in here. It's gonna be weird because I don't. It's gonna be in the show notes, and I don't know how to replace it, but that's fine. It's all good. I'll figure it out. Let's see here. Oh, hey, there you are. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I should have.
Neil here, one of our Patreon members on LinkedIn. Titanic and the Titan: The Human Impact of Hubris on Safety.
Nice title.
I like that.
Yeah.
Alluding to the inappropriate pre-show joke was the title that we would pick maybe for that episode. So it's good to see some varying opinions here.
I was gonna say, I think Neil's might be a bit more appropriate.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Oh man! All right, I gotta change. Something here. Barry, this week a bunch of retailers had deals and sales. Did you partake in any of these?
I did, but on a very boring level.
Okay. I'd love to hear.
So we are in exciting news, and in fact, I don't think this is public knowledge yet. So if you can just keep this between me and you, this would be great.
Okay, yeah, got it.
Nobody else is listening. That K-Sharp is moving headquarters. So we are going to be moving, I think, maybe even in the next couple of weeks, out of where we're at, which is in a big rugby stadium, out to we're taking over a first and second floor set of offices. And so that means we're going to have, rather than just one and a bit rooms, we're going to have multiple rooms. We're going to have space for the new staff members that are joining us. I'm also going to hopefully get a lab room, a technology demonstration room, and all this sort of stuff, which is brilliant. I'm really, really excited about it. And it's reignited something, the sort of the enthusiasm, motivation, all that sort of stuff. However, one of the things it doesn't have, so because we're on the first floor, so UK we have ground floor, first floor, second floor, rather than first, second, third floor like you do in America. So on the ground floor, we have literally just got a staircase going up, and so we need basically a ring doorbell, to act as like an intercom and that type of thing, and a camera to look down for security. And so with the with that shopping day, I bought myself some of them.
Oh, okay. So roundabout way of saying you got some cameras.
That was a long way around saying I've got some cameras, but yeah, I thought it was a very exciting way of doing it.
Okay. Well, I got a couple things, and I don't know. So one of them is my one more thing, so I will hold off on talking about that. The other thing, I just sometimes buy things that I think I need and then probably don't actually need it. So one of them I actually have here on my desk, and it's actually a nice tool, and I've used it quite a bit. I got this thing.
What is that?
Now, if you thinking this looks a little bit like a hairdryer, you're half right.
Okay.
It's actually an air compressor that you can put different attachments on.
Okay.
And I'm going to turn this on. It spins at a very high RPM, and actually, it replaces canned air, compressed air that you would use to clean out a keyboard for. And it's pretty powerful. So here, I'm gonna give a little demonstration here. See, so it's going. It's going. It's got a little light on it too, so I can flash you. And then here you can you can see it going. It's going. That's cool. Like it's really going. I sound like I'm in a wind tunnel here. So it actually works out pretty great. So that's one thing. I bought some other stuff too. I'm actually putting together a UX research kit for us. So I bought some lav mics that I think we might actually take to HFVS this year. I'm not sure.
That's exciting.
So there's that. But these are really nice, and I'm not going to talk about this during my one more thing. But talk about user experience, man. This is amazing. Can I just say how amazing these lav mics are? Because look, okay, it comes with 3 pieces. These 2 on the sides are lav mics, and they just clip right on here. Okay, right? They clip there. The other thing that it comes with is a little receiver. And what's nice about this kit, it's a little pricey. It's like over $100 for this, but it's really nice because you put the receiver where it needs to be. Okay, now you see the receiver there. It has the 2 little blue lights. Okay, watch this. I pull out one lav mic, and you can see the light on the lav mic, and the lav. Oh, it's already paired. It's already paired. It's there. And then you pull out the other one. It's already paired. It's there. Yeah. Check that out. Everything paired. All you need to do, plug this in, and you're set. And so I'm thinking, like, and then just to turn it off, I just put that back in, and you can see the light goes off on this guy right now. It's searching for it. Put it back in, and this is a charger as well. But not only that, each one of these can be individually charged.
Oh, neat.
Independently of each other.
Can you plug an external microphone into that as well?
No, they are the external microphone. Yeah.
I've got because I've got the Rode ones, and the Rodes they have the microphone on them, but you can also, if you want to put a higher quality lav mic on as well, then you can make it almost like it's a proper microphone and clip set.
No, these are great though.
I love that as an entire package because you're right, you can just carry that around and just go with it.
And so I was telling you this, Barry, before. My thought is maybe we take these to HFES this year and make it really easy on us. These are, like, you can tell, this is low profile. This is the size of one of these mics. The quality isn't terrible. And if I had more bravery, I would set it up right now so you can hear what that quality sounds like. It doesn't sound bad. It's obviously less great than this, but it's good enough. Yeah. And so my idea, grab 3 or 4 of these. Like I said, they're a little pricey, but I think this would do it, where we plug each one of these into a separate feed on the board. Yep. And then throughout the day, basically, I'd wear one of these. And since we're doing a long stream, during commercial breaks, I just throw this out and connect it. And it's through the same input, different mic, different charge. And so I can be completely wireless the whole day. This thing stays plugged in independently, like I said, because it has that charger. And yes, I can post it in the chat, Neil.
How long does each one stay charged for?
I don't know. I haven't done that test yet. I am doing some extended research next week that I will be able to test those and run them through. I have a couple extra battery packs to run me through, so I'll be able to tell. But yeah, let me get that link before I forget about it. And this is, normally I'd probably do an affiliate link, but I don't have that set up right now, so it doesn't matter. I just want people to be able to find this. So let me see here. Lav mic. And I need to find the brand because it is it's not an off brand. It's just a less known brand. It's Hollyland. And they have a lot of really high rating reviews. The specific set that I got, I mean, they have sets where you can, like, this middle piece can plug into like an iPhone or something. You can buy adapters for that. I wanted the sort of the one that would work for all the setups. So yeah, here is the link to it. Again, this is not affiliate. That's just the Amazon link, and we got to start the show here. But to make it easier here, I am just going to here, even easier for you. I'm just going to throw up a QR code so you can scan it. Mollyland Lab, Mike. There you go.
Oh, I see it. Yeah,
that's what I was talking about right there.
8 hours battery life.
Yeah, okay. It says 8 hours. In my experience, those are never super accurate. They're a little extended, but yeah, I will we'll let you know. I'm testing it out next week. Okay. Well, with that, it is about 30 after, so I think we should start the show, yeah?
Well, I guess we should. That'd be a good idea.
I mean, I could sit and talk to you like this for hours.
That's true. That's what we're here for.
That's what we are here for. We're here to chat. All right, so let me go ahead and play this, and we'll be back.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Human Factors Cast. We're recording this episode live on July 13th, 2023. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby.
Hello, and it's good to be back after our week hiatus.
Yes, we are back. We have an awesome show lined up for you tonight. We're going to be diving into hostile design. What is it? How can it impact social inequality in our cities? And that's not all. We're going to be answering some questions from the community. We've got someone looking to implement user research for their small company. We're also going to tackle the question about asking for advice on gaining confidence in their abilities. And just from today's chat, it's kind of like a live on the fly edit, a question about fearing failure in UX research. But first, let's go ahead and get into some community updates, programming notes, if you will. Tomorrow, this is the first thing I'll say, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern, there will be an HFES town hall. Now, this will be a great opportunity for all of you to show up and ask HFES leadership and others questions that you might have. Tomorrow's topic is getting involved, the Internal Affairs Division, but there's going to be much more than just that. So please attend if you can. Again, it will be live on all the platforms you're experiencing now, as well as all the official HFES channels. Now, for the other piece of news, we were off last week, but that doesn't mean that we weren't doing some fun stuff in the meantime. Safe and Effective Episode 2 is out now. Join Heidi as she sits down with Maggie Reef to talk about a conversation from the medical device development from a device engineer's perspective. So all the human factors chat about device engineering, really interesting chat. It's always weird. I said this in the pre-show because I sit in on these conversations. I'm not part of them. And so it's like, yes, I've lived this, but I'm listening to it. So anyway, go listen to it. It's out now, literally on any of your podcatcher platforms. Safe and Effective Episode 2. Barry, I have to know what's going on with the latest over at 1202.
Well, I've got to be brutally honest, and not a huge amount recently. We've had the same episode with Kate Preston. It's a fantastic episode, so really well worth listening. But we've had it up there a while because everything else has been flat out. So we've got no new episodes, or we've had no new episodes come up. However, there is a new episode coming in either this Monday or next Monday on human factors integration, which is going to be really well worth listening to. We're just getting some final ticks in the boxes for that. And then we've got some other cool interviews lined up. So a bit of a hiatus at the moment, but new content coming soon.
Exciting. I'm excited because I finally caught up on my 1202 feed. So I'm excited for more stuff. Anyway, we got a great topic tonight. Let's get into it. That's right. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. Barry, what is the story this week?
So this week we are talking about hostile design and how can urban design impact social inequality. This article explores the concept of hostile architecture, which refers to the intentional design strategies that control, direct, or inhibit human behavior in urban spaces. Examples include benches with armrests positioned in the middle to prevent people from lying down, metal spikes attached to surfaces to deter skateboarders, and high-frequency sound devices to discourage groups of teenagers from congregating. Hostile architectures has its roots in the defensive architecture of ancient times and the Middle Ages, where cities were designed to control and secure their populations. Today, this type of design is used to address perceived problems and challenges in urban spaces, but it does carry significant social implications. Critics argue that their hostile architecture perpetuates social inequalities and marginalizes vulnerable populations, while proponents claim it is necessary for maintaining order and cleanliness in public spaces. However, research shows that hostile design merely displaces undesirable behaviors without addressing the root causes. Moreover, the ethicality of these design strategies is called into question as they deliberately increase discomfort and exclude certain individuals from public spaces. Ultimately, the conversation around hostile architecture highlights the need for a more compassionate and comprehensive approach to urban design, one that considers the needs and rights of all the citizens and seeks to create inclusive and welcoming environments. So, Nick, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the bench down your local park where you can't have a sleep on it overnight?
Look, I think this is a really cool topic and a great article over at UX Collective. I'd encourage all of you to go watch, not watch, go read the original article. I think there's a lot of really interesting points there, and is one of the reasons why we selected it as a topic to talk about on the show. I think this is very cool because it's something that it's almost like dark patterns in UX, where if you think about sort of these things that exist to get you to do something that you may not want to do, right? It's just a really fascinating topic to me, and so cool topic. But is it not so cool from a basic human necessity standpoint? I'm not sure it is. I think I'm not necessarily pro hostile architecture here, but I think is this or the fact that we have or design for hostile architecture a reflection of us as a society and our failure to address some of these root cause issues like homelessness or public disorder? Like, how can we as a society better accommodate people in such a way that we don't necessarily have to do hostile design to get the desired behaviors that we want? So fascinating from that perspective. Barry, what are your thoughts on the article?
So I'm in a similar boat. I really like this topic because from a human factors perspective, we get to explore this from both approaches, almost from the different users, the different stakeholders involved, and really how do we balance that and balance them requirements off each other. So at one extreme, we sort of highlight it in the article where it talks about medieval design with walls and things like that. A modern perspective, we use fences, we use walls. I mean, we put barbed wire on the top of them, we put razor wire on them to control where people go and people's access. It's not that long ago. I used to know that where you had a brick wall and people would concrete broken glass into the top of it to make sure that nobody would climb over. And where we use these techniques to stop, say, loitering, like groups of kids hanging out where we know these groups of kids cause trouble. We know that these groups of kids will do graffiti and street vandalism. That's then seen as a positive by the community because we have this inbuilt idea that we see a group of kids and they're clearly they must be doing wrong things because that's what groups of kids do, isn't it? Which is clearly that was sarcasm if that didn't come over. But then also, like I guess the more emotive one really is where we see homeless people sleeping on benches and in doorways. But we can see that from a business owner's perspective. If you run a business or your own home, if you live in a block of flats or something, you go down to the hallway, the flats, and there's people rough sleeping. Well, you don't want people sleeping in your doorway for a number of reasons. And if you're looking after the town or the city or the communal spaces, then the benches are made to be sat on. They're not made to be slept on. So working in this way, then actually you're using design abilities to make sure the seats are being used for what it is that they've been designed to do, because they're a seat, they're not a makeshift bed. But then you circle right back to why people have to sleep on there in the first place. That is user behavior. That is, they are residents too. So if they can't sleep on there, they still need to sleep somewhere. But so just shifting them, or we're just moving the problem out. It's an out of sight, out of mind type of thing.
Exactly.
We're not fixing the other half of the equation, which we then therefore have a responsibility as a society to do. But bring that back to a human factors perspective. Is that our problem? Is that something that we should be cognizant of, given when we're trying to solve the problem? Where is our moral boundary? Where is our thing on that? Because there's loads of other bits of elements where we deliver human factors without necessarily thinking about the ethical standpoint in society, shall we say? So, yeah, it's interesting. That's why I think it's a great topic, because it brings everything together.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways, and there's a lot of places we can go with this discussion. I'd like to start off with a social thought, and if you want your social thought to be read on the show, we do post all over internet, so just comment and we'll find it. But Neil, one of our patrons here, ever carry Allen wrenches or other similar small tools with you while walking around cities asking for a friend? And I mean, like, he's right. It is an inconvenience, not only for the people that they're designing this for, and like, it's interesting because who is actually designing these? Is it UX researchers? Is it human factors engineers? Like, who is doing the design of this, where it is intentionally, I don't know, trying to target a certain demographic? I think it's interesting from that perspective. I thought it'd be good to go over just a couple examples of this. You mentioned a few in the blurb, right? Armrests on benches. In fact, you can go and look at our thumbnail for an example of this one. There's a woman trying to lay down, and she can't do it because there's an armrest there. So armrests on benches, you think about things like metal spikes. And I think you also mentioned the high frequency sound devices that are only being able to be picked up by younger ears, right? And so it's targeting an age demographic. There's other different types of things that I think there's some really obvious examples, and then there's some subtle examples. And so we can go over some of those. The anti-skateboarding, I don't know, they're like little metal strips that they put on curbs so that way people can't grind down them on their skateboards. There's other sort of obvious ones like boulders or rocks in certain placements so that way people can't sit or congregate in those spaces. There's also making the benches themselves sloping or uncomfortable. And I think, being able to not sit in a place for a long time is probably, intentional in a lot of cases. Then there's also some really subtle examples, like the high frequency one. Unless you know it exists, that's not something that you are necessarily privy to all the time. Like, if you can't hear it because you've already lost all those all those cells in your ear, like, then you're not gonna be bothered by it. It's only young people.
Interesting
Go
fact.
ahead.
I could hear them up until I was about 30, because they're meant to be just up until what, 18, 19, something like that.
Yeah.
I could hear them well into my 30s.
Good for you.
Well, not really, because it's really irritating.
But there's some other subtle examples as well. So blue lights in bathrooms, and this is not one that I immediately thought of, but sort of the blue light, it's being lit with blue light to make it harder to find veins that you can you can read between the lines there.
Sorry, just to jump in, we had a social thought on exactly that topic.
Go ahead.
It's probably worth highlighting. So this is from Kim Darkin, and but she sort of highlights it's awful. In some cases, it can do more harm. So the use of blue lighting in stairwells and under bridges to stop people injecting drugs because it's hard to see veins in blue light. If someone is that desperate that they're injecting in a car park, a blue light will not stop them, but it will make it more dangerous for them and the community, as there's more likelihood of a blood spill. Yes. Surely the money spent on these initiatives would be better spent on support, which is kind of what we were saying earlier as well.
Right.
But again, it's interesting, isn't it? It's that whole unintended consequence of what seems on paper, logical idea. But then it's that wider implication of, well, so what?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a great. Thank you for bringing in that social thought. I was kind of just rolling here. Let's see here. The idea of bench bars. Have you seen these? I've seen these, and these are annoying. Where instead of like the sit down benches, these are you lean up against them, and it's kind of like just a place to lean and relax instead of sit and relax.
So that brings in another social thought.
Go for it.
So so Claire Haslam highlights most bus shelters, and actually what she's referring to there is in the UK, we have a lot more of these bench bars as part of a bus stop. And I know of a specific instance. So when I was a counsellor, that there was a particular bus stop outside of somebody's house where younger people in particular were congregating around this bus stop, and I got called into by the owners of the houses right next to it, saying, "We're getting all these people congregating all the time. What can we do about it?" And that was one of the solutions that was recommended, was that we put in these bench bars so people couldn't sit. But then it was like, well, but what about people who actually need the seats when they come to get on the bus? So that was a bit crazy. But yeah, so we see a lot more of bench bars being used in places where you traditionally have a seat.
Right. And then the use of uncomfortable material or design, and when these seats or benches are made from uncomfortable materials or designed in a way that's uncomfortable to sit in for a long time, that's another subtle example of this hostile architecture. And then the last sort of example I have is narrow or uncomfortable sidewalks. And this is one where if you don't want large groups together in one space, you make the sidewalk narrower, so that way there's an intent behind not being able to gather in that area. And so I think these are some really interesting examples that we can think about as we look at this topic. And I guess we'll bring in sort of the last social thought here that we have, at least in the show notes, is that this is by Sarah. And she writes, I imagine many stories can be told by people with disabilities, visible and invisible, about how they've been excluded from spaces. The impacts on the sense of place, an active omission can seem like commission in design, and then also urban versus urban space designed to bolster the needs of children or older users or welcome pets, sort of that inclusive community. And so I think this is a really interesting point that we can use as kind of like a springboard. What do you think, Barry?
It is a really interesting point that is every space intended to be used by every person? So if you've got, if a public space is turned into a skate park, for example, just thinking off the top of my head, well, that automatically excludes me from that space because the chance of me getting on a skateboard and surviving are very, very slim indeed. Equally, there's other spaces which aren't made for the youth to go and use, that are maybe made for people who prefer walking through tranquil gardens and things like that. Even just general grass, some people can't access grass because it's either too muddy for, like, say, wheelchairs or people on crutches and things like that. They're not, some things that are would seem to be very simple to access, maybe are not. But I think there is a difference in maybe not really thinking about exactly who should, or focusing a space on a particular demographic, which I think is different to what Sarah's pointing out, where she's highlighting, actually, if you don't think about who is going to use the space and make a conscious decision that they are either included or excluded from that space, or maybe not, it's not focused towards them, are two different things, and I think she's quite right there. But it is interesting. So look at these going through some of these obvious examples. So we noticed when we were out yesterday, so some examples of these benches that have armrests in the middle of them. And in fact, I've chucked a picture in the show notes of that was a live photo that we took yesterday, which doesn't help anybody else on the podcast, but I can see it. And that was just
Patrons can see the notes.
that's true. And so that was just yesterday, sort of like highlighting the fact that there's no way. So it's just it's a metal and wooden bench with a metal arm right in the middle of it. So there's no way that anybody could lie down on it. I did ask Amanda to lie down on the bench to prove the example, and she was unwilling to do so in the middle of the public forum. I think that, do you think that is different from the anti-skateboarding devices? So the anti-skateboarding stuff where kids can go and basically stopping them using the street furniture as a playground. So the street furniture, which is totally not intended to be that sort of use. Do you think that's different? Do you think that's right? Just put you on the spot.
This feels like a gotcha question, Bear. Because look, like the intent behind benches is to allow people to sit and rest. And if somebody is still intending to rest by sleeping, you're preventing them from sleeping by putting that arm in the middle of it, right? Just like you're preventing somebody from skateboarding from skateboarding on with the metal strips. But what is the intent behind curbs and retaining walls? Like, think about it. What is the intent behind them? Well, it's to define a space, right? It is to define either a sidewalk or, like in the instance of a retaining wall, it is to sort of keep things in, okay, like dirt or plants or whatever it is. The intent behind that is not to be a playground for people to skate on. And to me, this hostile architecture of including things like a center bar on a bench, that is a little different from putting the metal strips. It's a matter of maintenance versus perception, because I think in the case of the metal strips, that is a maintenance question. When skateboards grind on curbs, it can damage them. It can make them unsightly. But if somebody sleeps on a bench, that doesn't do anything for the bench. It is a perception problem about the city then at that point, at least to me. And so I do think they're different in terms of the intent, because you could have very much like it's the difference between dark patterns and intuition, I guess, where you do something because it's intuitive, and when it's something that you want to do, it's pleasant. But when it's something that is benefiting the company that is doing that dark pattern, then it's like you view it in a different light. And so I feel it's very similar to that, where it's a feature, not a bug, to have the strips. And then it's also, it's definitely keeping homeless people out when you have that bar in the middle of it. Like, let's be clear. So it's a difference between perception and maintenance for me, because keeping the kids from grinding their skateboards down a curb is a maintenance problem, because that's not their intended use. But keeping people from sleeping on a bench, well, the bench is for resting. So you just don't want people sleeping there because you think it's going to lead to encampments. So that's my thoughts on it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I might agree more violently with you, because I do think that the anti-skateboard devices. So if you're skateboarding off street furniture, off curbs, off things like that, the chances of you having an injury, or doing something, hitting somebody else, having an injury, or damaging the curbs or whatever it is itself, that is not. It's not being anti-social. It's not being anti-people. It's asking you not to ruin the thing. There are other places to go and skateboard. Go and skateboard. Have fun. But this is almost encapsulates what I'm about to say about the armrest. We know that kids like to skateboard. And grown-ups like to skateboard too. So we know people like to skateboard. And so we turn around and say, we see your skateboarding and we give you your skate parks. We give you, certainly in the UK, we see more and more pop-up skate parks, pop-up half pipes and things like that. So we recognize that people want to do this. And so because it's the kids and because it's cool, we build them nice little skate parks to go and
That's
do it.
great.
And that means that we can turn around and say, "Will you stop skateboarding in the public space and trying to endanger people? Go to the skate park." You give them somewhere to go,
Right. That's great. But
and this is where
counterpoint. What if you don't have the money for both?
Well, let me finish my good point first, and
Go
then
for
you can rip to shreds. This is my problem with the armrests on benches, because on the one hand, this is a great piece of human factors engineering. The requirement has been people are sleeping on the benches, which is really not what they're designed to do. It's not good for their own health. It's not good for the perception of this of wherever it's at. It'll increase litter. Include there's loads of reasons why sleeping on park benches is not great. A, for the person. B, for the local area. So we do all week. So we've come up with a design here that stops them from doing that. Brilliant. Bit like putting the anti-skateboard devices on. We've come with a solution. What we haven't done here is turn around and say, you can't sleep here, but you can sleep over here. We haven't given that balance, that alternative place that we do. So all of these things, I think, need to be in balance, because it's a bit like if you tell your children off, you stop doing that, or don't do that now, but you can go and do something over there. You give them an alternative outlet, and I think that's where the whole for us, that would be the process or procedure that's put into place. So we have the initial requirement of, we don't want people sleeping here. This is how we're going to design that out. But you would have the so what part of that, and saying, right, well, the other bit of that, we've done the physical bit, but what about the environmental bit, where you turn around and say, right, so what is the knock-on effect? We're going to have people who need to sleep somewhere. They've got nowhere to sleep now because we've put in a piece of hardware. Where do they then go? So you're going to give me a counterpoint.
Well, yeah, no, I was just going to say, well, what if you don't have the money for both? And that's exactly the second point that you were making there. It's almost like I shouldn't have interrupted you while you were talking. But here's the thing, like, you're right. Why are we spending money on skate parks and not homeless shelters? Like, that's not a question that we can answer. But also thinking about sort of the cost of these patches, right? What is the cost benefit to having a center bar on a bench, right? Well, it probably costs not that much to include that on the thing. The benefit, I use that in air quotes for people listening. The benefit is that there's no visible person staying there for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
But you're right. What then the trade-off to that is that, yes, they go somewhere else. Now, the same thing can be said about the other example, the metal strips for skateboarding. What is the cost of building a skate park versus the cost of building or including these strips? I mean, I would imagine that the cost is quite significant to reserve a part of the land for a skate park versus just including these metal strips on the thing, right? Like it's the same argument, but there's different, I guess, intent behind them, right? You give a skate park for somebody to skate because the curbs are not meant to be skated on. Like, I'm arguing that the bench is meant for resting, maybe not for extended periods. And if you go by that definition, then fine. I think the interesting thing to me here is that when we look at the world through this lens, when we take away, like, imagine a world where we take away hostile architecture, what happens? Well, we have people who are finding places to sleep, and we have people who are using the environment, the city, as their playground, and we also have people who are doing what many would consider socially um, inexcusable behaviors and practices, like drug use, in these public places, right? And so what exactly do when we look at a world where that is happening, I think it would be much more likely that we would try to do something about it. And to me, hostile architecture is a patch that says, let's just put this off to the side so that way we don't see it, out of sight, out of mind. We don't have to worry about it because we've patched the good area. And again, good is in air quotes there. We've patched the good area and we're going to keep it tidy. So that way the perception of this area is clean. And we don't have to do about the other things because they're going down the hill to the park that really, we don't. This is what people see. The park, whatever. They can find so like that's to me what is happening here. It's a patch to fix a problem, and then when it is out of sight, it is out of mind, and then we don't do anything to solve the problem. It's a much larger societal issue, but that to me is what's happening here.
So, to play devil's advocate or devil's human factors advocate is if my requirement is sent to me that I've got a public space, I will never be in charge of the city or the country, unless anybody wants to make me prime minister. Then knock yourselves out. But I'm not. If I'm in a position of responsibility of looking after a certain area, then I'm going to look after that area. That's my area of responsibility. And it's not. I don't have as a human factors practitioner in this element, I don't have the tools or wherewithal or even responsibility to worry about society's homeless, do I? So if me or you were given the brief of we've got these places for people to sit in, but they're being taken over by people who are sleeping on them, which is not an intended use of a bench, because that's what it's not a bed. What can we do about it to make that? Because you could take away if you took away the benches and replaced them with single seat chairs. So there weren't benches, there were chairs close-ish together, but with gaps and things. Is that hostile architecture, or is that good planning, or is that good design? Because you can sit on them. It's clearly intended to be a seat, things like that. So I guess what I'm getting at is, from a human factors perspective, from a design perspective, these are good. These are ways of thinking around the problem and delivering what it is that they need to be. It kind of goes back to what I was saying with my initial thoughts of, we get involved in other areas of design development that have a consequence that we are happy to ignore. I guess without beating around the bush, I've worked in defense now for 20 odd years. And there is we dress it all up in being very nice about what it is that we are engaging with and this, that, and the other. But fundamentally, there's elements there that, without being rude, put a kinetic effect and enables people to kill people much more effectively. And this is almost a similar issue that the people have come up with designs which, from a human factors perspective, I think are quite good, but sociably unpalatable. How do we?
I was gonna say you call these things good, but like, is it like it's I would argue that they're effective design.
Yeah,
They are getting people off the benches. They are stopping people from.
they do the job. Therefore, they're good.
Yeah, exactly. They're effective. They're effective. And what is good is a societal fundamental question that we all need to think about in our head, right? And
You're right.
so that is part of the question, though. Would if we as a society thought that it was just that people don't have a place to sleep, would we then think this is good design, right? Like, do you think it's good design when you sign up for a service that you didn't mean to through dark patterns? Like, is that good design?
Well,
It's effective design.
it's effective design. I mean, I guess on the one hand, because we're dealing with homelessness and that's more emotive. Because I think we're also good social thinking people, and therefore we want to do the right thing overall. And sometimes I think it can be quite hard to distill the two, one from the other. I guess a less Possibly decibel. So the high frequency sound device, the mosquito device that you can put out. So like as I said earlier, I can hear them outside. Or I used to be able to hear them outside shops till quite late on, even though it was promised that no, only children can hear about. And we want to deter groups of younger people congregating together. Why do we want to deter groups of younger people congregating together? It's a perception issue that we think because there's a group of kids all getting together, they're going to do bad things, and people feel intimidated. Again, going back to my cancer days, I was going past an underpass in the area that we lived in, and a woman came up to me and said, "You need to do something about that group of people over there, that group of kids over there." And there's a group of maybe 10, 12 kids hanging around. I was like, "Well, what have they done?" Well, they're hanging around. And I'm like, right, get that's cool. What have they done? Well, I feel intimidated. Right, okay, and it's perfectly legitimate that you feel intimidated, but what have they done? Have they done something to make you feel intimidated? Because you're on the other side of the road, they were quite far away from. So again, it's for me, it's this almost perception thing around just because we've got a group of young people, they're not necessarily who I am. Therefore, I feel intimidated. Maybe it's influenced by social media, what we see in the news, etc., etc. So, why the need for these devices as such? Are they bad, or are they're keeping groups of kids away from certain areas? I mean, I know one shop that used it around their loading bay, which seemed a more legitimate use of it because they wanted to make sure that there was no groups congregating. So when the trucks reversed it, it was safer. At least that was a logical argument. But then we have them in public spaces, and I don't think that's legit. I don't know. What do you think about? Do you think these these sound devices aren't hurting anybody?
No, I mean, look, the intent behind what we're talking about, the topic of hostile architecture, it is really a way to control or direct
Mhm.
people in certain way. And if you look at the origins of hostile design as we're talking about it today, this is another fascinating look that the article takes. So I again encourage you all to go read, listen to it. But they talk about the origin of hostile design, and in ancient times, the intent here was to be defensive, right? You think about building walls to protect your people from those that are not you, the other. There's always a fear of the other, the fear of the unknown. The more, this is why, just generally, why you see sort of more progressive policy that is inclusive in major city centers is because you experience more diverse perspectives than your own versus living in the rurals where you don't necessarily get a diverse perspective. It's us versus them. And so when you think about trying to protect your own, the thought of hostile architecture of trying to control or direct another group, right? If it's homeless, that's another group. You do not belong to that group as a city planner or somebody with a job. Like you don't belong to that group, and so they're other. It's fear of the other, and that again, like just getting at the ancient purpose of hostile design is where we have to come back to. And so when I think about hostile design in cities, it is because we aren't getting that perspective in the design phase, right? Is it good design if we're not accommodating for all the users,
Mhm.
right? If you think about a public place and public facilities, i.e., a bench, if you are not getting a representation of all the users, including those without homes, including those who want to skate in the public place, are you building something that is, I mean, is it going to be effective for most people? That's something that you can argue. Is it something that's good for all people? No. We can objectively say no, right? And so we can objectively say that, right?
We
We can objectively say that it's not good for all people.
No, it's definitely not good for all people. Flip side, counterpoint. Does that mean that I should be designing beds in my public spaces?
No,
Why not?
because is it good for all people? No.
When It's interesting, isn't it? Because when you start driving through that, then actually you end up building nothing because
Right.
you offend somebody, or you don't design for everything. I think does this go back to, I guess what I said at the beginning is, as long as if you're clear on what your intent is, who you are including, and who you're focusing on rather than not, then it's interesting because for me, then you also then saying, right, I'm not focusing, this area, this space is not for homeless people to sleep in. So therefore, you've then articulated that you recognize that there are homeless people. So therefore, you then should be turning around and saying, right, if they're not going to be here, where do they go? What is their option? What is their opportunity? If this isn't for kids to be on skateboards, or groups of kids to go, or groups of younger people to go, okay, it's not here. That's fine. But where? Where is it? Where do they go? Where do you set that other requirement? And there is almost that for me is almost the crux of it. Actually goes back to a bit on today. Is the thing of saying, if not now, when? If not here, then where? Because you know, so in the plan, whatever plan that looks like, you've highlighted a user set that might not have been thought of, and that's legitimate. We don't necessarily all think of all users all the time, but as soon as it's a bit like Pandora's box. As soon as you turn around and say, right, this set of people cannot use this public space, therefore there is a requirement for another public space for these people, whatever that is, and that's how your user requirements come into play on this wider level. This is where we struggle within a human factors perspective, because we've done it around climate change as well. That we think around the human factors environment that we're talking about as being a singular space, a bounded environment, a bounded place, a place of work, or it could be a vehicle, or it could be whatever. We struggle when it comes to the wider environment, the bigger piece,
Right.
the macro level. So that idea of macroergonomics, and this absolutely plays into that.
Yeah, that. I mean, that pretty much sums up my thoughts as well. I think this this is a one size fits most, not one size fits all, because you do to make things equitable, you need that other space that will address the people that are not being served by these design decisions in the common area, right? So if you do implement benches with armrests, also erect a homeless shelter. If you are putting up these metal straps, also build a skate park. If you are installing these blue lights, then also invest in drug prevention programs and education. If the list goes on, for everything that we're patching, there is an equal thing that we can be doing on the other side of it to help address the root cause. And I think we're both on the same page for that. This is just a fascinating topic. I feel like we could keep going on and on and on, because like we keep bringing up the same examples of those two. They are very easy to talk about, but there is like a whole list of them. And I'm interested in what others think about this discussion. So I'm going to call to action. Everybody go comment on this episode, wherever you're watching or listening, to let us know what you think. Barry, any final thoughts about hostile architecture?
I think there is a lot we can do in the human factors and ergonomics domain around this that perhaps we're not being engaged with, or we're not doing because haven't got the broad enough viewpoint and potentially the influence where we need to have it. Therefore, in a similar to what you've just said, there is a call to action there to happen, to work out, right, how do we actually get involved in this, and how do we actually make sure our human factors is effective in this space.
Yeah, sticking the problem somewhere else is not going to solve it. It's just a patch. All right. So thank you to everyone for selecting our topic this week, and special thanks to our patrons. We also want to thank our friends over at UX Collective for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post links to all the original articles and our weekly roundups in our blog, and you can also join us in our Discord for more discussion on these stories and much more. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to see what's going on in the human factors community right after this. Are you tired of boring lectures and textbooks on human factors and UX? Well, grab your headphones and get ready for a wild ride with the Human Factors Minute podcast. Each minute is like a mini crash course packed with valuable insights and information on various organizations, conferences, usability methods, theories, models, certifications, tools, and much more. We'll take you on a journey through the fascinating world of human factors, from the ancient history to the latest trends and developments. Listen in as we explore the field and discover new ways to enhance the user experience. From the Think Aloud protocol to the critical incident technique, focus groups, iterative design, we'll make sure that you're the smartest person in the room. Tune in on the 10th, the 20th, and the last day of every month for a new and interesting tidbit related to human factors. Don't miss out on the Human Factors Minute podcast, your ultimate source for all things human factors.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our monthly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and access to the full library of Human Factors Minute, a weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you, as always, to our patrons. We especially want to thank our Human Factors Cast All Access and VIP patrons, Michelle Tripp and Neil Gainey. Patrons like you truly keep the show running, truly keep our operations smooth, and I can't even begin to explain how much that support truly helps the show. Speaking of our Patreon, our dumb commercial read this week, and that's the official part of this show that we're calling a dumb commercial read. Hey there, Human Factors, HCI, and UX professionals. It's your favorite podcast. I don't know if I'm your favorite hot podcast host. Ready to deliver another exciting live read. Now I know, wow, this host is always so enthusiastic. Well, I can't help it if my delivery is just that electrifying. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about something even more electrifying, our Patreon page. Yes, that's right. We got exclusive club just for you, our loyal listeners. It's called Human Factors Practitioner Tier. And just for $1 a month, you get some seriously awesome perks. That includes a Discord channel to connect with other supporters for Patreons only, and enjoy the full audio version of our weekly podcast. We do a pre-show and a post-show every week, so you get the whole thing. It's like having a backstage pass to the most entertaining show in town. But wait, there's more. At the $5 tier, you'll not only get all the benefits at a Human Factors Practitioner tier, but you also have access to the full library of Human Factors Minute. Yes, what you see out on the public feed is just a fraction of what we have backstage for you. Now, if you're ready to take the Human Factors expertise to the next level, then Human Factors Scientist tier is for you. You'll receive all the other tiers. This is getting lengthy, so I'm just going to say, look at our Patreon. There's a lot there, and there's plenty of ways for you to support the show, and we make sure to give back at every tier. So, my friends, don't miss out on this exclusive opportunity. Join our Patreon, become part of the Human Factors Cast family. Just head over on to patreon.com/humanfactorscast or click on the show notes. Remember, it's not just support. It's a whole new level of Human Factors awesomeness. All right, what do you think about that one, Barry? That was a little rough.
8 out of 10. I think you've done better, but you've done a lot of worse.
Thanks. All right. Well, let's get into the next part of the show.
It came from.
Yes, it came from. This is the wonderful part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics that the Human Factors community is talking about. If you find any of these answers useful, give us a like or follow to wherever you're watching or listening to help other people find this content. Algorithms, man. All right, so we got 3 up tonight. The first one here is by General Building 381 on the UX Research subreddit. They write, implementing user research from scratch. They write, as someone with a background in design and cultural anthropology, I'm looking to implement user research at my small company to improve sales. I need guidance on starting a UX research role from scratch. Any suggestions on where to begin? Barry.
Yeah, I think for me, if you're just thinking about doing it, why? Well, why do you feel you need to do it? Why? What do you think it's going to achieve, and therefore, what value is it going to bring to your small business? And the reason for saying that, it sounds really obvious to say, but if you actually sit down, write it on a bit of paper, whatever suits you, that will then enable you to understand the business need and therefore the business value. That enables you to scope out the initial job role and understand who it is that you actually want. Because this could be something that you think might just be an idea, you're not entirely sure what value it brings. Therefore, you might want to you don't want to invest much cost into it. Therefore, you might want to bring somebody more junior in to maybe grow the role. Or you might understand exactly what it needs to do. You're absolutely convinced it's going to bring massive amounts of value, but you want that to happen quickly. So you bring in somebody, you invest more up front. You bring in somebody a lot more senior, and hopefully they hit the ground running and bring in their experience of what they want to do. But fundamentally, just saying, "Oh, I think UX research will do some cool stuff," that's the starting point, but you've got a fair bit to do. Just asking some simple questions to understand why you think that. Therefore, then it'll hopefully bring value for you for your business. Nick, what do you think? How would you get started in that position?
Starting something up at a company is hard because there's already an established culture. And so, I mean, if this person is looking to hire UX research, then that's one thing. If they have a UX research background and how to build it up, that's a different thing. And I want to talk about the second piece because the decision on whether or not to include user research or UX at a company is separate. And I think this other side will have a lot more actionable impact. And so when you think about trying to start something up from scratch, you have to change culture. And so to do that, you need to interact with all the groups. It's easier at smaller companies because then you know everybody involved. At larger companies, that you need a much larger support system to try to get that momentum of, hey, include us 6 months ago and not 2 weeks before the thing ships. Like there's a lot of things that need to happen in order for that cultural change within a company to happen. And so just understanding where that company is at, who the major players are in that process, and trying to change the minds of those people so that way it trickles down into UX research is probably the way that I would go. Okay, let's get into this next one here. How long did it take you to become confident in your interview skills? This is by Gergmurf on
Nice
the
one.
UX research. Thanks. On the UX research subreddit. Right. Asking for advice. How many interviews did it take you to feel confident in your abilities? Now, this is user interviews, not like job interviews.
Hmm.
Barry, what do you think?
Um, Define confidence. I think I'm more than happy and content that I can go and interview people. I can go and interview. That's not a problem, but only if I've done my preparation. Only if I've done the requisite steps that you need to go up and do that sort of interview in the first place. Because I can be the best interviewer in the world if I don't actually have the plan, if I don't have the questions in place, well, I'm going to be rubbish. I'm going to be absolutely rubbish because I often say that the interview is only a quarter of the actual job. Because yes, it's the bit where you're interactive. So um, there is a level of practice and I guess experience there for when things happen that you don't expect, and maybe the way that you craft some of the questions, or you're crafting the way that the interview is going to go, and maybe you get a curveball that you weren't expecting. Being able to handle that type of thing is something that you do pick up with experience. But even then, I think it didn't actually take me that many interviews to realize that it was about preparation. I did trip myself up quite badly through non-preparation, and I swore never to make that mistake again. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it is really all in the prep work. And I think there can be a lot of flailing with juniors and not understanding what it is they're asking. And so I guess the actionable insight here would be to, when you do prep, understand the intent behind each question. What is it that you are trying to learn when you ask them that question? Is it an opening to a deeper question that you're trying to understand their process? So it is a lot in the prep. Try to understand for them the best of your ability, to the best of your ability, what it is that they do in their role, so that way you can already start to meet them. Like if it's a brand new domain, brand new thing, you're going to try to go out and understand exactly, not exactly, but most 90% of what they do in their role. And then to get that other 10% about the user needs, that's kind of where the magic of the interview comes in, or even 80-20. That's fine too. Just understand a lot about what it is that they do. And then you'll find those surprises as you start to ask them. And you can almost have them challenge your assumptions, and that's great. So it is all in the prep work. That's it. All right, this last one here is kind of on the fly decision we made tonight. We got a question in YouTube, on our YouTube by Bailey, saying experiencing fear of failure in UX research career. Bailey writes, I'm experiencing a vulnerable time in my UX research career where I have a fear of failure. Thoughts on this? Barry, fear of failure.
I never fear failure. I'm completely
Okay.
lying.
All right, moving on.
No, I think the fear of failure is there constantly, and I think if you weren't concerned about failure, then I'd be wondering: are you challenging yourself? Are you doing interesting things? I've spoken before about imposter syndrome, which I think goes hand in glove with this type of thing, of which is something I know I suffer from on a more than regular basis. But it's almost part of what makes this job interesting and exciting. Which also leads itself to that potential for you to think that it's all going to go wrong. So we go into new domains, when you go into new teams, because we largely work, certainly I've worked a lot as as a single person in a role. You may be the one human factors person or one ergonomist, one researcher, in an organization, and so there's a lot of pressure on you at that point. That makes it really exciting. That makes it really fun because you can go and scope things, you can do things, but actually you're also sitting there going, well, am I doing it right? What happens if somebody else comes along and looks at what I'm doing and goes, you're doing it all wrong. You should be doing it like this. You should be doing X, Y, Z. So it is all there. However, there is a lot of this where just be confident in your own abilities, but also don't be afraid of sharing your concerns. If you're in a position where you've got line management structure, share it with your line manager, share it with your peers. And if anybody else then says, oh, well, I don't fear failure, then they're lying, or they're not being honest with you, for whatever reason. Therefore, they're not that good a mate. So talk about it, and talking about it, I think, is the biggest and best thing that you can do. Because not only are you highlighting to others where to hopefully get some some assurance from people that actually know you're great, but also you're showing to other people who may be having the same fear of failure, actually, it's fine to talk about this, and we can do it. So talk about it. Nick, I've waffled on quite a lot. Do you fear failure? Are you fear of failure of answering this question properly? And you're on mute.
Podcasting for how long? And I do that. I think this is an interesting question because I am thinking about this in a way that I relate to. So for me, fear of failure goes hand in hand, like you said, with imposter syndrome. But what is failure? And in the opposite direction, what is success? And I think when we start to think about what these things are, what is failure, what is success, and we sort of widen the aperture of what success looks like and close the aperture of what failure looks like, then you can kind of sort of participate in the self-compassion that I've had to learn when it comes to these things, right? So, like, is failure what? Losing a job? Okay, yeah, that's unfortunate. Can you find another job afterwards? Is it going to end your career? What would you like? I think that is something that, is there a career ending move that you can perform? And then think about the things that would be career ending moves. Have you done any of those? Probably not. I mean, probably not. You might have, but I don't think so. Is it something that might get you fired from a job? Yeah. Okay, fine. Move on. And it's easy to say move on, but again, what is the aperture of success and what is the aperture of failure? For me, success could just mean getting through this podcast and answering this question. It could also mean doing, something successful at work. And what I've found that is helpful is to document the wins or the successes that you experience or that people have said about your work. So that way you can remind yourself, this is the perception. I have sort of higher standards for myself that I need to work through. And if I don't meet those standards, is that failure? Maybe this is something that I've worked through with my therapist. I don't know. But it's, widen that aperture of what success is, what failure is. And practice that self-forgiveness, because sometimes your standards of yourself can be so high that anything seems like failure outside of that window. And so that's where I'm coming from. Anyway, it's time for one more thing. Barry, what's your one more thing this week?
So this week we had an interesting thing where my daughter's finished her first year at university. And so we had to move her out of her university halls into a house that she's renting for the second year. And I don't understand how such a small flat, such a small apartment that she was living in, can hold so much stuff. Also, she was on the third floor of this without a lift, and so got very bored very quickly of trudging up and down and up and down and up and downstairs. What was the most interesting, and I did it. You could tell where tiredness was coming into play. Where I got up to, I knew I had to go up 3 flights of stairs. And so, but more than I think it happened about 3 times. I actually got to the second floor and opened up the door for the second floor bit, and actually think, because all the stuff was piled on the landing, opened up, it's all gone. That's really weird. Where's it all gone? And realised I still had another flight of stairs to walk up. And when you're tired and you're exhausted and swear words are just not enough anymore, that's where I had to dig deep and crack on. So yeah, an interesting experience yesterday of doing that, and then ended with learning more about different types of tequila and margaritas. So fun day was had by all. Nick, what about you? What's your one more thing?
There's a summer sale, and I got a Steam Deck. It's kind of like a Switch, but it plays PC games. So I will say I'm like fairly new to it. I just got it like 2 days ago, so I'm like doing all the setup. I will say 2 things. One, setting up games that are on the platform that you like, Steam, right? If you buy games on Steam, you can play them very easily if they are compatible with the deck, and that's very nice. Very easy to use. Now, the thing is, if you have a bunch of different games across different platforms like I do, different stores, that takes a little bit more tinkering. When you get it working, it's extremely satisfying. So it's good for tinkerers in the sense that you can actually get stuff to work. It's not completely closed off. And so that's nice. And I'm learning Linux how to do all that. So that's cool. Well, that's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode, enjoy some of the discussion about architecture, I'll encourage you to go listen to our episode 254 on The Line, where we talk about that new city they're building without roads, cars, or emissions. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join our Discord community. Visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest human factors news. You like what you're doing? You like what we're doing? You want to support the show? There's a couple things. Well, if you like what you're doing, give yourself a pat on the back. You deserve it too. But if you want to support the show, there's a couple things you could do for us. You could leave us a 5-star review. We'll take that. That's free for you to do. You can tell your friends about us. That's also free for you to do and really helps the show grow. And if you want to, and have the financial means to, you can always support us on Patreon. We'll take your money and we'll put it to good use, I promise. And as always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Stick around if you're watching live for a post show. I want to thank Mr. Barry Kirby for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about hostile architecture and benches?
If you want to come and talk about benches, then find me on social media, particularly on Twitter at Baz_K. Also now on Threads, which is interesting. But if you want to come and listen to interesting interviews with people in and around the Human Factors community, then find me at 1202 on the Human Factors podcast at 1202podcast.com.
As for me, if you want to talk to me being a naughty bench, you can find me on Discord at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning in to Human Factors Cast. Until next time.
It depends. Bench. Where did that come from?
Wait, I'll have to do that one.
Oh, fair enough.
Bench, please.
I meant to say to you at the pre-show, because we could have talked about it, but are you on Threads yet? Have you had a look?
Yes, I am, and the podcast is on there too. We're there.
What do you think?
Not as sold on it as everybody else.
No, me neither. I don't know. For me, the biggest issue I've got is is the timeline. There's something, because it's not a sequential timeline.
No, it's not.
You've got no idea what the heck. So you've got no sort of flow or continuity.
When was this posted?
Yeah. And also it is throwing up a lot of people that I'm just not following. And it's basically my timeline is full of a lot of people who I'm not following. Therefore, but encouraging me to follow them. And I'm like, but I wanted to follow them. I'd have been doing that in the first place.
I would have been doing it.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing too. For me, with the other one that we don't mention anymore, that one allowed me to organize people in different lists. So for me, I have like my human factors list and my Star Wars list and my politics list, and they don't cross most of the time, right? And for me, it's very much I like to put people in categories. But I mean, people post about certain things, right? Here on the podcast, we would post about human factors things, and so we might go on your human factors list. But to see us right next to something else that maybe you're not, like the juxtaposition it doesn't work for me. And like the same thing with the timeline too. Like there are some things that I like to see in timeline order, some other things I don't care. Like for Star Wars, just give me the top news. For politics, I want the minute by minute. For human factors, again, top news. And so, yeah, it's not working for me.
I sort of find myself at the moment using different platforms for different things now. So I still do use Twitter for politics, because I think that still gives you the most up-to-date stuff. Facebook has always been around sort of friends and stuff like that, and so I use that for that. I'm starting to use LinkedIn pretty much solely around sort of business stuff and professional stuff, and so that's there. Instagram, I'm still sort of not loving but not hating Instagram. It's actually, I spend most of my time looking at the stuff that my wife sends me, because she fills up my inbox saying, you need to look at this. Right, okay, fair enough. And then I'm using, good point. And then I'm using sort of TikTok for mindless drivel, and then YouTube for largely, I think now I've got 3-4 channels that I watch fairly religiously around car building and stuff. It's interesting. I think there is. I don't get Threads and stuff. A lot of people are saying one of the things that are good about it is it's still a nice platform. It's a bit like Instagram is still a nice platform. Pinterest is still a nice platform. Interesting. But do you think it'll take? Do we think? I mean, is it successful because it's not Twitter, and yet it's remarkably like Twitter? So it's just basically an anti-Musk sentiment.
I think. Well, so I think the things that is making Threads so successful right now, that is something that no other platform can replicate, is the ability to tap into existing networks. And so by tying it to an Instagram account, you can say, yeah, follow everybody that I follow already.
I hate it.
And
absolutely. Sorry, I just got in.
No,
I hate that. It really annoyed me that I didn't realize it had done it, because he was kind of saying, "Oh, you've now followed this person, this person, this person." I was like, I don't want to follow these people on that. I don't. I want to work out how I curate this. This
exactly
platform, something.
Yeah, there's no curation. That's the thing. It's like it doesn't allow you to. So I'm pulling it out right now, and I'm like just seeing sort of what pops up in my feed, and I'm getting recommendations for Ted Lasso next to like people doing yoga on the beach, and then Secret Invasion spoilers, and then like news about the Screen Actors Guild. Like it's just all over the place, and I don't like that. I like if I go into something, right? Like if I go into my Star Wars feed here on the blue one, then I see official news, and I don't see anything else. I see ILM, and I see games, and I see all the stuff that I'm looking for because I went to that thing. And that's the biggest thing for me. A lot of people really like it because it's a Florida man. Florida man is not far off from imposing their will on Threads, I'm sure.
Well, isn't he trying to sue Meta for basically just copying it all? It's like, well, how much have you actually copied that isn't already sort of out there? And presume, I guess it's just a social network, isn't it? So
the one I want to try is Blue Sky. You heard about that one?
No, that's a new one to me. That's the
one that
I've heard about it, but I'm not investigated.
That's the one that Jack is setting up. So, old CEO of Twitter, he's setting up a new one.
Oh, okay, cool. So how will that? So what's the spin on that, or is it just rather than tweeting, we're going to do something else? So
I forget what they're called. They're I forget what they're called. You can't try it because it's not open. You have to get invited.
Oh,
which is
why haven't we got invited yet?
I mean,
I don't know. Do they not know who we are?
I signed up for the invite. If anyone has a Blue Sky invite, wants to send it our way, we get one for the podcast.
Well, because we followed out with Elon anyway, because he still refused to send us that Tesla. And we're not talking to Apple because they refused to. They didn't send us the headsets.
The headset. Yeah. Something I gotta say though, like something weird is going on with social media lately, right? Like between this whole Elon stuff with Twitter and between the Reddit drama with the whole API thing and Threads, it feels like a weird space that we're in with social media. I don't know where to go for things right now because I'm like, do I still go to Reddit for these it came froms? I mean, that's where we've been going, but their API policy, like, have you been following that? Like, do we still play into that? Like, I don't know. Do we support it? Do we not support it? It's still a great place for discussion for a lot of things.
See, I'm not a massive Reddit user, so occasionally, mainly because of what we do on this show, I've now got the Reddit app, but I know some people can go in there and lose hours reading through the stuff. There's a couple ones that do pop up on my phone because clearly I look at them more than anything else. And one of them is the one about Tinder failures, which I just find hilarious.
Oh yeah.
And then there's the am I the a-hole? Which is that's always makes good reading. But I can't, and I've got friends who just literally will happily lose an afternoon or whatever reading story after story, thread after thread. I'm just like, it just doesn't have that appeal for me, which is good because I think it shows that there's different, there are still different social media outlets there for different types of people. But I like the way YouTube is evolving. I think that there is more content on there that is more appealing as a platform. That's quite cool. But yeah, there's something that I don't know what something new would look like now. What the
I
level is.
I almost want to segment my communities like I mentioned, right? Human factor, Star Wars, politics, whatever. I almost want to segment all of my communities. I almost want to do that for friends and groups. And I mean, like, they kind of do that, but like, I don't know, like Facebook groups is weird to me, because I have things like living in the Pacific Northwest next to my Star Wars builder group, and like, it's weird to see those things right next to each other, and I still haven't reconciled in my head how, and right next to friend posts too, and it's just like it's this weird hodgepodge, and that's the reason I don't use it as much. And then YouTube, I used to be a much more active user on, and then like the same thing happens with subscriptions. Like, I want to be able to subscribe to certain feeds. Like, I see your stuff, your 1202 stuff, right next to Star Wars builds, and like, no offense, Barry, but I don't want you in my Star Wars builds, and I want my Star Wars builds in my Human Factors feeds, and it's just it's weird to me because yes, it's tailored towards my interests, but my interests are segmented.
I mean, as I said before, I know that generally I have different platforms to do different things, but they do blend over. So whilst my and I guess it's just the nature of the way things are, because we've got I do have Facebook mainly now as a almost closed community for my friends, but also my friends are a lot of the people I work with or engage with around the human factors domain. So there is generally going to be some crossover there. Twitter used to be my politics outlet, and where I used to engage when I was more heavily involved in politics. Now less involved in politics, so I do less of that, but I am pushing out. But it is more of a push than from that perspective. But then I get my reading of up-to-date news from that. But then I've got people on both platforms, and yeah, it's interesting how some of that plays together. I mean, I think if you wanted to do it completely segmented, I guess that's where the third-party apps come in, like your tweet decks and stuff like that allow or cater for more of that type of thing.
I don't want to use that. I want to use the native app. Why? Like, I don't know. I just think that to me, that is the next step for a lot of these social media companies, is to like allow users to have a little bit more control. If they want the same thing, they can have it, but let me have different subscription tiers, or let me have different, like things of subscriptions on YouTube, categories, genres, whatever you want to call them. Like, because I'm not watching all of my subscriptions anymore. Like, that is something that I used to do, but I don't do that anymore.
I've only got about 2, maybe 3 subscriptions that I watch religiously.
Yeah.
All to do with either car building or car, wreck recovery, which is a bit weird because I don't do car building or wreck recovery or build knives.
Right.
But it's
interesting. And this is where it's weird to me too. Like, as we're content creators here, right? And to me, this is odd too, because it's, where do you send out a message if, like, we're not going to have a show for a week? Mm-hmm. And this is true for like Patreon too. When you subscribe to somebody on Patreon, are you getting the digital files next to the podcasts, next to the, those are the two that I know. Digital files. What?
Like the blog post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I subscribe to a few that are like 3D files, STLs.
Right.
To get access to those, and then I subscribe to a few podcasts too to get them ad free or whatever. And Like I still don't like the fact that they're all mixed together. And the thing that helps with the Patreon side of things is that like the STLs I go to the site for, the podcasts are through a separate RSS feed that I don't have to worry about. It's just in my other apps that I use for podcasting, which is nice. Yeah. And so like I don't need to go to that site for it. It's just like I still see the posts interwoven with my STLs, which is, you know, of course you can go look at the creators too, and then that's ultimately what I end up doing. It's just weird, man. Like, I don't know. Social media is weird because, like, where do we go? You know, people are joining us right now on a variety of sites. Like, we are streaming across Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter and what's the other one? Twitch. And yeah, so we're across all of those right now, and we're getting people commenting on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you know, it's like we're getting comments everywhere. And some people can't see those comments, and so we try to relay those or put them on screen. But again, don't cross the streams. I don't know. Maybe you need to. I don't know, because like, how do we get that information out there?
Well,
that's why the town halls are interesting, because they're live format. Everyone come in and join. And that's why I like doing these live shows, because we blast it out to everything. But if we need to get a singular piece of information out, do we blast it out across everything?
Yeah. Why
don't we just have a singular thing for everything and then allow us to separate it? Because then there wouldn't be competition. But I struggle. No,
it is. It's interesting. It's and I think again, social media is sort of evolving, as has also been mentioned in the comments. You know, Threads is a good example. It's still immature. So we know that when Twitter first started, when Facebook first started, they evolved. And I think we are still, you know, these will still keep evolving. There'll be, you know, there was various ideas that, you know, that Twitter came up with, and they've gone by the wayside. There's other things that have gone by the wayside. These things will evolve. But you mentioned about listening about podcasts. One thing I wanted to mention before we disappear tonight is,
yeah, go ahead and plug all your podcasts. That's fine.
No. Have you seen the explosion in other people doing human factors based podcasts?
Yes. Oh, I'm aware.
There's like cool people who have clearly taken on the example set by us and going and being inspired by that. So I think there's a few quite good ones out there. It's interesting to see.
Yeah, I have seen those. And we're not. By the way, we're not a competitive space. Like I don't know. Like, to me, if I see other Human Factors podcasts, like, it's Barry. We got together on this show because, you know, we started talking because we were it. Like, let's be honest, we were it.
And you clearly recognize the talent. So
exactly, game recognizes game, Barry. And
no, it was though.
So, like, yeah, no, I mean, and we got along great. And why is that? Because we're in a very niche area with similar interests, and we both like podcasting. Probably similar personalities there, and I think that probably is true for the other people doing this stuff. And so, if you see other Human Factors podcasts out there, aside from the ones that we've, you know, explicitly stated in our network, they're not part of us, but we would love to, you know, collaborate with them. So if you want to reach out to those people and say, hey, have you heard about Human Factors Cast? They want you on your show. They want you on their show. Yeah, let them know.
I think it's I think it's fab. I mean, there's a few out there. So there's a couple out in Australia now. There's a couple more here in the UK. I think they're delivering different types of content, and fair play to them. And certainly a couple of them I'm speaking to anyway. So I'm going to try and do my usual interviewing other podcast hosts. So we're hopefully going to make that happen over the next couple of weeks anyway. But no, I think I just thought it was quite interesting now to see that more and more people are coming out of the woodwork and are willing to talk about human factors in a podcast-based format.
Yeah. I mean, we have competition in the sense that now there's more things to listen to in this domain, and you may not want to listen to this type of content compared to other types of content if there's something more specific to you, and that's fine. Do that. I'm all for that. We are a panel show that talks about current news and or things that are going on in the community, and so like that is what we are, right? We're not an interview show.
Exactly.
That's your shtick.
It is. So nobody else allowed to interview because I do all the interviews. But
right. Barry does the interviews,
except for all
and
the
then
people who are interviewing.
Right, and then like on Safe and Effective, it's medical human factor stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not my expertise. That's somebody's shtick.
It's not mine.
And I'm really glad Heidi's doing it. Like, she's getting a bunch of folks with a lot of really great experience on the show and talking about diverse perspectives. It's great. It's great.
Which is good.
Very cool stuff.
Yes. I'm about ready to go to sleep.
Well, hey, me too. And it's only 4:00 for me. I do want to check in one more time on the news stories for next week. So I'm just going to throw this up once more. Again, anybody can vote on this, and I keep saying next week, but it's episode 289. So for 289, if you want to go ahead and scan this QR code, anyone can vote on this. The news stories for next time. The Titan disaster. This is the big one, right? A tale of human factors in failure. The other stories are humans may be more likely to believe disinformation generated by AI. And the last story, robotic glove lends a hand to relearn playing piano after a stroke. So there's a couple options there. Right now, I am actually really surprised with the distribution here. We got half and half. 3 and 3 for 3 for Titan Disaster, 3 for Robotic Glove. So it's anybody's game at this point. We need some tie-breaking votes. So if you are watching or listening to this, go to our Patreon. Again, anyone can vote. You just need a Patreon account. You don't need to sign up and do the whole dollar thing. It's open to everybody.
It's interesting
so go vote.
It's interesting that we've got that piece where some people obviously want to hear more about the Titan disaster. I think there is a lot of really informative, really interesting, and lessons there to be drawn from that. And I think, as I think we said it in the pre-show, there is going to be a lot that we can learn from it because it brings together so many different elements to it.
It does. Yeah.
But equally, the robotic glove thing I find absolutely fascinating. I have some interesting discussions with people around the use and abuse of haptics and that type of thing. But if this can do that sort of thing, then on the face of it, just say, yeah, learn to play piano, who wants to do that? But the broad exploitation of that could be mind-blowing. So
it could be, yeah. I mean, I don't want to get too deep with these because then we get attached and then we get sad when the thing doesn't get picked for the next week. But man, like any of these would be great. So go vote on them. Again, I'll put up the link here and I'm going to count down from 10. You have about 10 seconds to scan this QR code. So get out your phone, go there, or you can just go to patreon.com/humanfactorscast. Look for the latest Choose the News. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's gone. And if you want to leave your thoughts, I guess we can throw this up there. If you want to, oh wait, not that one. This one. Do that one. If you want to leave us your thoughts on any of these things, leave us a voicemail, and we might just air it on next time's show. Or even you give us your thoughts about this week's episode too. I'm down for that too. That's fine. Maybe we do a recurring segment if we get enough of those.
That's true. That'd be quite neat. You tell us how
good news versus bad. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Barry.
I said, tell us how good we are or not on voicemail format, and we'll.
There is. Look, to be fair, there is a link for feedback in the show notes. So if you want to leave feedback, please do that too.
I delete.
Yes, good news versus bad news. So this is something Neil and I talked about, and potentially, like we always talk about the bad news, the human factors tragedies that happen, but we rarely talk about the human factor successes, and that's something that we're talking about and potentially trying to get to give a platform for those successes and feel good stories. So,
well, it's that whole positive. So it's something that in the CIHF we are trying to challenge our membership to do and ourselves to do, is to do the show the positive way. If you're going to go along to a business and say you need to do this, rather than saying you need to do this, otherwise they're all going to die. That generally doesn't really capture the imagination in the same way from a business perspective, as you can actually improve your product, you can get better and save money. It's about the positive.
Right.
The positive will sell better than the negative, because people do prefer carrot rather than stick. But you do need a bit of stick.
Well, speaking, I don't know. There's not really a good transition. Speaking of sticks, the stick has hit the top of the hour.
Fair enough.
Maybe, I don't know. And it's time for you to go to sleep.
It is.
Because it's late for you. And that's it for us. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate the live chat tonight. It was really fun to talk through this story. We'll be here potentially same time next week. There might be something going on that stay tuned.
We'll see.
We might put something out there on social media, whether or not we can make it or not. But in your feeds now, you'll see the Safe and Effective episode 2 is out there. So go listen to that. The HFES Town Hall is tomorrow. So join us for that. There's a lot of good stuff coming out. We'll put that in our feed too. So plenty of stuff to listen to. If we're not here next week, we will be here the week after potentially. So we'll be back to talk about something soon. How about that? Hopefully it's one of these stories that y'all are voting on now. It will definitely be one of these stories that y'all are voting on now. And that's a long-winded way of saying good night, everybody, and see you all soon.
Catch you later. Bye.
Bye-bye. Are you tired of boring lectures and textbooks on human factors and UX? Well, grab your headphones and get ready for a wild ride with the Human Factors Minute podcast. Each minute is like a mini crash course packed with valuable insights and information on various organizations, conferences, usability methods, theories, models, certifications, tools, and much more. We'll take you on a journey through the fascinating world of human factors, from the ancient history to the latest trends and developments. Listen in as we explore the field and discover new ways to enhance the user experience. From the Think Aloud protocol to the critical incident technique, focus groups, iterative design, we'll make sure that you're the smartest person in the room. Tune in on the 10th, the 20th, and the last day of every month for a new and interesting tidbit related to human factors. Don't miss out on the Human Factors Minute podcast, your ultimate source for all things human factors.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast Network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our monthly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and access to the full library of Human Factors Minute, a weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you,